Good evening, students. Do you hear me?
Good evening, teacher. Yes.
Thank you. Welcome to the encounter. Okay, tonight we are going to review information about how to teach reading, but also we are going to review or we are going to talk about how to develop creativity through a reading sequence and divergent thinking too. So the readings that you had 2 weeks ago were about teaching reading, right? And there were some tips on how to teach reading. And some of that information was about pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading exercises. So I would like to start by asking you what pre-reading exercises do you usually use in your classes? Those of you who teach, or those of you in your experience as students, as learners, what pre-reading strategies do teachers use?
Good night, teacher. How are you?
Hello, Fernando. How are you?
Okay. May I say my resources? What do I
Yes.
do in class?
Yes, please.
Okay, very good. What I try to do, we have at school we have a platform that is called My Own. It's a platform where kids are able to get online, and they are able to read books. What I normally do is during the class, I get some time of my class. I take some time of my class to do reading exercises. So, for example, this platform, My Own, allows you to play the book, the audio of the book, and sometimes I make them repeat. After they have repeated the whole book or a paragraph, I ask them to write in their notebooks what did they understand about that paragraph, like the main idea of the paragraph.
Okay, so that is an exercise that can be used for while reading. So while they read, the students have to find out the main idea of the text. But before students start reading, what activities can we have students work on?
Maybe I think that it would probably work if we teach students how to pronounce like the words that they are supposed to read, how to pronounce them correctly. Like for example, if I'm saying you're gonna read these sentences, this sentence, my father uh, go go to my French class today, for example. So, or went to my French class today. So I would say students to read. When M is with Y, you say you read I, or yeah. For that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I'm
Yes,
Okay,
I
explaining
agree with
myself.
what I
I
understand,
agree with
Juanita, is that in the case that the reading exercise is about reviewing pronunciation and not getting the knowledge of the content of the reading, you will have a pre-reading exercise about pre-teaching some sound. So by the time that they read aloud, they will do better.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
In the case that the aim of the reading is on having students practice how to pronounce the words. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Diana. Good evening, Felix and Carlos.
Good evening, teacher. How are you today?
Good, Felix. Thank you. Good. Okay. What other pre-reading exercises can we have in the class?
I would, hi everyone, this is Fernando speaking.
Hello, Fernando.
Hi. I apologize, last week I was working out in Bogota, so I couldn't attend to the class. Okay. So, according to these pre-activities, I would work with the students the context we are dealing with in our reading. For example, if we read something about cars, mm, I would talk with them about it, about the context. Or if we read about shopping, we could talk about a little bit about shopping and introduce some vocabulary. So they recognize that vocabulary in the reading. No?
Okay.
Okay.
You mentioned two strategies, and there is a research about the first one that you mentioned, which is telling the students information about uh, of what they are going to find in the reading, and that research says that that strategy is more effective than pre-teaching vocabulary.
Okay, I see.
Good. Okay. What other pre-reading strategies can the rest of the students mention? What have you seen in your classes as learners or that you use as teachers?
Okay, teacher. Hello, teacher.
Hello.
It's Carlos. Okay.
Hello.
I think the one of a good strategy to create a good setting of reading would be, for example, to create a list of vocabulary before starting the class, so they can know what they're gonna read through the reading, and give like roots.
Okay.
What is the reading about? Yeah,
Give them clues of what they are going to read.
yeah.
Okay. Any other strategy?
Yes, teacher. I don't know if you already mentioned because I'm late and I'm sorry for that. But another good strategy for teaching reading techniques is to have students focus on the pictures. Sometimes if the readings have some pictures or some graphs, uh, and that helps students to kind of predict what the text is going to be about. Sometimes it's also good to have them scan the text, no, not scan, but read it quickly, like skim it,
Uh-huh.
or have them predict what the text is going to talk about according to the pictures or to the subtitles, or to have a quick view of the text and let their partners know what do they think the text is about.
Okay, good. So as you mentioned, we can use the pictures or we can use the title to have students predict what they are going to talk to read about. Okay.
Or we can teach students what like language of what they're going to read about. If the reading is about food, then teach them like the names of the food they will find in the readings, for example.
Okay. We
Teacher,
could
I
use,
have something to add.
yes, just give me a second to tell Juanita something about what she just mentioned because it's important.
Okay.
What Juanita mentioned is fits in the presentation practice production sequence. In that sequence, we teachers infer or teachers believe that students cannot infer information. So if we start the lesson that has a reading planned by pre-teaching vocabulary, we are telling the students, or we believe, that they cannot infer vocabulary from context, or that they might probably don't have knowledge about, previous knowledge about the information that they are going to read. And that the idea with pre, while, and post reading exercises is to promote more communication, is to elicit from the student the information they might have about the topic and that they probably learned in other lessons if they are adults or they are adolescents. They probably have some information about vocabulary or something to say about the topic. So just for you to have in mind, you can use any um, you could use any method to teach, but presentation practice production is old, and the idea is to focus more on methods that promote communication. Okay, Fernando, you wanted to say something.
Uh, yes, teacher, I was going to ask you something. A reading exercise could be also skimming and scanning, right?
Right, but skimming and scanning, well, skimming could be a pre-reading exercise because skimming means that students will read very fast and try to come up with a general idea of what they might probably find by reading slowly the information. That is skimming, reading very,
Okay,
very fast. And scanning is an exercise that promotes or that can be carried out while reading. It means that if I have some questions about specific dates or specific nouns, specific names of people, so I can ask the students to scan the reading and find those specific words to answer their
okay,
questions. So that one is used more in the while reading stage.
okay, perfect. Perfect, teacher. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other strategy that we can use in pre-reading?
No, teacher. One recommendation that I want to give you is, for example, to give our students an appropriate reading, yeah, to the level they are at the moment. Because sometimes, as you said before, we give some kind of readings that are very difficult for them to understand the words that are in the text. So it's necessary that they can understand the 60% of the words that are in the reading.
Yes, or that they might infer information or probably a reading that they about a topic they might know or they might have read in Spanish before
Yeah.
and also be helpful. With this, with the with methods in which the teacher has to plan the lesson, is there are some risks that what the teacher plans is not what the students want to do because they don't feel motivated by a certain type of information. So that's the risk that we have when we plan the lesson. And although there are methods that promote communication, which which help us to sequence information and plan the lesson, there are other methods that are that do not promote that idea of planning the whole activity by having the students to be more active during the class, to be part of deciding what they have to do or they want to do.
Okay, teacher. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Lisette. Okay, so what he mentioned is very important because we need to try to find a purpose for students to read. So if we take a reading to the class, we need to have students understand why they are going to read that. What is the purpose of that? What are they going to gain with spending their time on reading that? So that is important. Okay, so other activities related to while reading. Now, while reading, we mentioned that while reading is when they actually start reading the whole text carefully. And we mentioned that scanning is one activity that they can do. what else can they do while they read?
Okay, for example, teacher, sorry, we have in the readings, a good activity that I liked a lot when I was studying English was ordering a story. It was very good. Reading for discussion was another one that was good. Yes, because you can organize debates after the activity is finished. So people is gonna be very focused on the reading just to have good arguments to to espouse or to debate with the rest of the classmates.
Okay, so we can have them while reading could be have students take notes so they can present the information at the end, right?
Yeah, they are not ideas.
Good. What else? Other exercise.
Sure, you can also ask them to underline or circle specific grammar structures that you're covering in a course.
Underline some words or structures or ideas that they can discuss later or that they need, if it's a structure, they need to analyze in order to find out the grammar pattern.
Yes, what I normally do, teacher, is we use story elements like setting, plot, characters, beginning, middle, and end. Also, I make them like recognize each part of the story element.
Okay, so that is called reading for to find out the structure of the text. Mhm.
Yes.
And if it's, as you mentioned, a story, so reading to find out the characters of the story. Okay, what else? Which other activity?
Be matching paragraphs to titles.
Good. So that's even an exercise that we find in TOEFL or IELTS tests, right? So read the paragraph and match it with the corresponding heading or subtitle. Which other? We already mentioned analyze the structure,
Clauses. I mean gap filling exercises.
fill the gap, close exercise. So they have a list of words that they need to write in the corresponding gaps. In order to do that effectively, they need to read the whole test to decide what word goes in what space. Okay, which other?
Maybe relate some vocabulary with images, just like for beginners.
Exactly. That's
I
a
can,
good exercise for beginners.
uh-huh. Or maybe look for the verb, like underline the verb or underline the pronouns, something like that.
Okay, if we
I can
want to
think about
focus
that.
on grammar. Yes, so with a pre, while, and post reading sequence, we can have students, we can give the context of the lesson. What does it mean? That we are not going to start by giving the students a list of vocabulary and an explanation of grammar that they later will practice, but we will present how they will find the language in real life. So in a reading or in a listening, in other case that we want to present a listening as a context for the class, or in a conversation or in a video. That is to show the context, to tell the students that that is the way language is found in real life. Okay, which other while reading exercise? This one is for
Multiple questions, teacher.
multiple choice questions,
Choice
right?
question.
So we have a series of questions they need to read in order to answer the questions. They can be open questions or multiple choice. The one that you see on the screen can be useful for beginners.
Yes.
Or maybe also personal questions for them to relate the contents of the text with their own experiences.
Okay, that could be. But this is, since that is to relate their own experience with the topic of the reading, that promotes communication. So that is after reading. So they need to use the information they read and they need to link it with their real lives in order to talk about their experiences, or um, if the information is helpful for them, or if they had worked on something similar. So that can be a good after reading exercise.
I suppose we students are reading in loud, right? I
They
suppose
can
that.
they can read aloud or they can read on their own.
Uh-huh.
I
In case they read aloud, I would suggest repetition of words or phrases or repetition as an exercise.
mhm. That's helpful for them to practice pronunciation and to get more confident about producing the words. So if the
Right.
purpose of the reading or one of the purpose of the reading is to work on pronunciation, reading aloud is necessary. If the second purpose of the reading is to have students understand the information, so it will be better if they read on their own so they can focus his attention on the information and not on the sounds. Okay, this one can be used for advanced students or intermediate students. So to work on metaphors, identify metaphors in a reading that has some of them. To identify a style and the purpose of the style. Why did the author decided to use some stylistic devices and not others? To have students evaluate if what they read has some support, some the author is giving his opinion or is actually supporting ideas with good sources of information. Okay, and as you mentioned, some after reading exercises could be to have a presentation, to use the information to make a presentation, or to talk about their personal experiences related to the reading. What other exercise can be for after reading? Any ideas on how to promote, for example, creativity after reading?
Uh, Maybe it could be having them make a what do you call this? When you draw images, um, a storyboard. No, what's the name of that? There are several images with and and there are some um, speech bubbles for each person. Maybe that could help them
Ah, okay,
improve
cartoons. Uh-huh.
cartoon. Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
so we can have students create a cartoon. Good.
We can also ask the students to create another ending, like to invent another
Okay,
ending for the situation, for the reading, for the tale, for the story, whatever.
right.
Like, or
Felix,
yeah,
Felix wrote that having the students start a discussion about a topic that creates critical thinking, actually.
That's really nice because when you allow the students to do that, they give really good ideas.
Yeah, they come up with good ideas and they tell us what they know about the topic. That's close to reality, right? Okay, any other way to produce creativity or divergent thinking? What is divergent thinking, for instance?
I think it's different ways of thinking of the person.
Exactly. So, different ways of thinking. So, there is not only one answer for a question, right? This drawing tries to represent that idea of divergent thinking. So if we promote divergent thinking, we promote creativity. And in order to find out different answers, we need a question. And that question needs to be connected with the student's context, with the student's reality. So I'm going to share with you a research, part of a research that was conducted by a person, a teacher in a school in Bogota that followed a series of stages to promote divergent thinking on students. So the problem that she had students to reflect upon was how to make the whole community, the whole school, start recycling more since the school had the usual boxes green, blue, and gray, but there were few people who actually recycle and use those containers. So by using that question, the teacher asked the students to brainstorm some ideas that were related to the problem. So the first stage was brainstorming, and then the teacher asked students to identify possible causes of the problem and possible solutions. Since the idea is to promote divergent thinking, the teacher needs to be able to listen to any type of answers and be able to help students listen the rest of the participants. So by brainstorming and by having the students think about the problem, the teacher wrote on the board all the possible ideas, all the ideas that the students mentioned, and then asked them to classify them as relevant or irrelevant ideas, taking into account the possibilities of how real they were, or how useful they were, or how new they were. And after doing that classification, the teacher asked the students to think about the hypothesis for the problem. So why they thought that the community didn't recycle if they had the knowledge on how to do it and the containers. And again, to think about possible solutions for the problem. The students work on identifying cause and effect relations. And the next stage was to have students think about how positive or negative were the associations that they were making between cause and effect, right? Since the question at the beginning of the lesson was to find out a way to make the whole community start recycling. They were trying to find out possible solutions, and the solution that they came up with after the whole process of brainstorming on and thinking about causes and consequences, think about positive and negative aspects, hypotheses and solutions, and all that. The students came up with the idea of creating, designing a new artifact more appealing for the community in order to classify the material. So they thought in groups, they thought about the materials for that new artifact, the size, the number of the parts, the location, the place where they were going to put that new artifact, and the people the proposal, the new artifact was being addressed to. So they created something new after reflecting on a problem, right? But why do I tell you that this divergent thinking can be part of a pre, while, and post-reading process? Because you can have students read about a problem. For example, one student in a different class had a sequence with a reading about why are bees in danger and why are bees important for the world. So students started with a reading that had information about these animals, but the sequence of this teacher was uh, have some ideas, understanding the information in the reading, having pre, while, and exercises, but the post exercise, the final one, was to summarize how to um, take care of bees by using the information they read. But these stages of divergent thinking could be applied to the sequence by having the students think about new ways of taking care of those bees, different to the ones that they already read. So they can get in groups and start thinking about other solutions different to the ones they already read. Have you guys ever done that, or have you experienced that in a class as a student? What do you think
Yes.
about it?
Actually, we use it a lot in different subjects. For example, since I'm a self-contained teacher, we have to make that our classes get together. For example, science, math, and English, they must uh, talk about the same thing, but in different things, in different aspects. So, for example, if I talk about a tally chart, it's the way they have to organize the things. They need to organize materials, and they need to make tally chart. Tally chart is like a modelo de barras, for example. So they organize those types of things. If I'm not wrong, is that correct? Is
Okay,
that like
you have students read and then use the information to create a graph that shows the results or summarize the information they read.
yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
but what about an activity that have students think about different solutions for a problem?
Okay, like for
Actually,
example, uh, what we normally do in class is we create a mind map. We start with a brainstorming, and then we create a mind map where they have to look for different solutions from the problem. So, for example, last week, before I had my baby, on Tuesday actually, we were talking about human resources and natural resources and the way we can protect those resources. Um, what they did was like they started with a brainstorm, and then in a mind map they start writing the natural resources and the human resources, and then like solutions for contamination, for things that are affecting our planet.
Okay, good. Did they come up with something new, something creative out of the
Yes,
reflections they had?
one of my students created a machine that recycled the smoke
Okay.
and turns it into rain.
Okay, pretty good. So in the place where you're working, you are promoting divergent thinking and creativity. I guess that lesson took you more than 1 hour, and it was a process for the students to come up with this
Yes,
new artifact.
ideas.
Mhm.
Yes,
Okay, but actually, students, by doing that, students uh, find out a purpose for the lesson and relate it with reality, and have more and more active role, and get more motivated. They are more interested, and they produce more. So that is actually what we have to do. The problems can vary according to the level and ages of the students again. Good. Thank you, Fernando. Any other idea?
okay, teacher.
Uh, Hi. Well, last year with my students, we did an incubator for eggs. We started like the whole investigation. We also worked like Fernando in with all the areas, including math, lengua castellana, science, and English. And we got the eggs. We made the incubator. First, we did the investigation. Then we made an incubator, and every day we had to flip the egg. Had to flip the eggs, and on day 21 the chicks were born. We put in about 25 eggs, and only 20 of them were born, and then the kids had to like come up with hypotheses of why the other 5 didn't were not born. And it was a pretty nice experience. It lasted like 6 months, and now this year the chicks are actually very big now. And on that was in first grade, and in second grade they continue, but investigating how why some of the chicks died, and that's what they're doing right now.
Good. So it's kind of a project, right?
Yeah, we work by projects. Yes.
Okay. And could you tell us the instruments that you use to assess students, um, and the criteria that you
Um,
use to assess them?
Well, we used different activities. We don't evaluate. We don't have evaluations, so we only evaluate the process. So, like the reading abilities, when we did it, we evaluated the investigation through the participation of the kids, because everything we did it in class. So it was just by the participation of them during the class, during the construction of the incubator, and the ideas that they could extract from the readings that we did from the investigations.
Okay. And how do you deal with accuracy? In what moment do you have students work on accuracy and grammar?
In the speaking process. because
So,
all the interaction is in English. So when through the speaking, we evaluate the grammar.
okay, and
And sometimes they also had to do some. Sorry, I'm with my baby. They had to do some production, writing production. Uh, so I did like some lab reports. So we did like a series of experiments. For example, how do you know if an egg is good to cook? And also in science, using the eggs, we did solid to liquid. So we had lab reports, and in the lab reports, they had to write like the hypothesis, like of the whole scientific process.
Teacher, to add something to what Lisa is saying, that's pretty cool because at school we have something that is called pregunta poderosa, or we also say what if. So the kids are able to create what if questions. What if the word wouldn't spin? What if so many questions that they have created, and that's a good idea, Liz. That's very good. That's what we also do at my school, and that's the way we allow the kids to think to go farther.
to
Yeah,
think about
I think
something
in my school we call
deeper.
it preguntas movilizadoras, but it's the
Mhm.
same thing you're saying.
Good.
Yes.
And he said, is there any is there any lesson to focus on grammar and explanations about grammar?
No, everything we work through interaction, so we really don't explain like grammar rules. It's all interaction. Really, we don't. I mean, in the explanations, we really don't focus on the grammar per se. It's everything through the interaction.
Okay, so that is like helping the students learn in a more natural way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I was saying at the beginning, or in one part of this encounter, that we have a series of methods that promote communication, and some methods allow students to participate, to be more active, and to be part of the decisions
Mhm.
that are taken in class. So Liz said is experiencing one of those methods, which is PBL and inquiry also, and problem solving
Mhm.
situations. So that's why she's not using like the traditional ways of assessing the students, like written tests, but everything that she has is more natural, more as a natural way of learning a language. So by reflecting about different things around and having the students work on projects. On the other side of that method, we have those that are um, very traditional and very structured, in which the teacher is the one who controls everything, plans everything, and tells students everything they have to do. So we should move to to the experience that Lisette is having. Because why? Because research tells us that learners get better results if they have a more active role while learning. Okay, I would like to listen to other comments about these experiences or questions for Lisette or Fernando, or maybe other person who's experiencing a similar method. if in the place where you work you need to use a textbook, so try to relate the unit with a problem in real life, or the grammar that you need to teach with a real problem that the students need to find out how to solve. Or check the readings that you have. They might probably help you to come up with an exercise to promote divergent thinking. Any other example of how to promote creativity and divergent thinking? Questions, comments?
At school, we also have something that is called Feria de la Innovación. It's where math and science and physics and all those areas get together and they plan. Like for example, this second term, what we do is in our unit plan, we have to involve um, those two areas, science and math, and we have to create activities where the students are able to research and innovate and experience things with those two areas. So, for example, they need to create an experiment where you can see math and science together. So I think that's a good space. That's a good space to promote creativity.
Do teachers at the place where you work actually come up with like the topics and the or possible questions like the ones that you mentioned before? What if? Or
Yes,
do
yes,
students?
yes. For instance, second grade, which is my grade, we came out with this question: what would happen if the planet stops spinning, or what would happen if the sun stops shining?
Okay. And in the case of the innovation fair, how does it work? What are the stages?
It goes from second grade to 11th grade. It's made in 2 days, and they have like stands where kids are able to go to every single stand and work and participate in every single experiment. So, for example, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and sixth grade, they have to create different experiments where kids are able to work with their creativity.
Okay. Thank you, Fernando.
I use a lot of role play. I think kids love role play because they really get into the role they're playing. So I use a lot of like dressing up, role plays. They really enjoy that.
But you have them like create their own role plays, or you have them read one that has already been created.
Give me a second. 1 second. No, for example, right now I am doing one, and we're this year with science and math. In my school we have coming up a race in honor of one teacher that died last year. So we are working the water, the importance of healthy habits, and why water is so important in our planet. So they are going to do a role play reporters. So they need to dress up as reporters, and they created themselves an interview. So each one is going to work interviewing their family members, and I told them to choose, the best interview, and they have to send it to me, and we're going to watch it together in class. But in this opportunity, they are going to their own interview, so they're creating their questions, and I asked them to be as creative as possible. So, you know, uh, the parents are very creative as well and very cooperative in this kind of activities. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay. Other good idea. Well, I'm going to thank you, Lisette. I'm going to read Jairo's comment. He wrote, "How about exploring with different texts that deal with the same common literature theme? Students could bring in students could bring in to one text a character that behaves similarly from a different text and try to integrate him in the new book context. What would happen to that character? How does the story change?" Okay, that could be like to have students think about a new story or some changes of the story or relate characters from different stories. And Alejandra wrote, you can use activities such as changing roles, student, teacher, design physical spaces in the classroom exclusively for creating expression, such as tables to draw, to make billboards, a stage or place to make puppets, or a space to work as a team. Integrate elements of art, music, and culture. Those ideas that Alejandro just wrote are useful for mostly for preschoolers. They need to develop their motor skills. So drawing and making something with their hands helps them a lot. Making something like puppets. So in those schools where there is like big classrooms, um, teachers can have like one part of the classroom devoted to creativity, in which the students can have different materials to draw or make other hands-on activities. Good. Carlos, are you an English teacher? If so, tell us, how is English taught in the place where you work? Carlos or Felix, the same question for you. If you are teaching, so how does teaching and learning works in the place where you work?
Could you repeat, please, the question?
Yes. If you are teaching, how is learning and teaching? How does learning and teaching work in the place where you work? I mean, do you have to follow a traditional method, or do you have like the possibility to experience different ways of teaching? Do you have to test the students in a written way?
Well, to say the truth, at school where I work, it's difficult to apply a test because the model that this school used, the educational model, is focused on more speaking and also reading, and it have different resources as internet or multimedia, for example, an internet platform uh, for this issue. I consider that this is there is a mixture between both traditional and modern method, because traditionally sometimes a teacher focus more in teach to the student a lot of grammar and and maybe take the place as a narrator or guide. And students sometimes have few possibilities. In my case, I don't teach English, I teach other area, science, but I see this where I work. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felix.
You're welcome.
Carlos, what about you? Are you teaching? And if so, how does it work in the place where you teach?
Sorry, teacher. Someone was knocking on the door, so I had to open the door. Sorry. No, teacher. At this moment, I'm not working as teaching, but last year I was using some methodologies, yes, to try to use really to try to get engaging topics to to put reading in a very good way in front of the students. One of the things that we used to do in the institute was to try to work on pronunciation through reading. Yeah, because a lot of students in this institute were very worried about the way they pronounce and phonetic sounds and some stuff. So I try to use every time that I use readings to work on these phonetic sounds and pronunciation and accent.
Okay. So it's closer to traditional education, what
Yeah.
what you have experienced.
Yes, teacher.
Okay, thank you, Carlos.
No, thank you.
Sebastian, what about you?
Well, teacher, I study at a language center, and we have several programs here. We have programs for adults, for teenagers, children, and also one called Cis Lenguas, which is a English program in at schools. They are private schools, and I can see that it's really different to teach in a school than in a language center. It doesn't matter if it is the same program, but the logistics and the mechanics of a school is it's really different. But what we try to do is to teach English as as natural as possible. I mean, with as many authentic activities as possible. Sometimes it's not completely authentic because we can go out to a restaurant, for example, whenever we cover the topic of ordering food, or we cannot ask native people to come to class every single day, but at least we try to cover the topics with authentic materials, at least from videos, from articles, and we are expected to teach English through with a lot of conversation, with critical thinking, and with a lot of. I mean, the teacher is not the one who speaks, but the students. That the idea is for them to take advantage of the time to to teach what they know or what they prepared at home, or based on their experiences. Um, it's a little bit difficult to have some teenagers speak more than the teacher because they are shy. They don't have much to say, but it's good to have this experience at a language center. This is AFP University here in Medellin. It's one of the most famous universities in Colombia, and I like it. I like it here. It's nice.
Okay. So like the focus is more on using authentic material and like is create a sequence of a lesson using that material.
Yes, yes. The books I consider the books that we have here and the syllables is is cool, and the books are are really interesting. They have interesting topics, of course, since they are printed materials, so they are not sometimes they are not up to date. So they talk about cell phones and they show a picture with a flip phone and things like that. But well, at least students take the best from those materials.
Okay, great. So I think we have heard all of you. Juanito, we understand that you have to take care of your children as well as Lisette. Lisette, I don't know if you want to finish the idea that you were telling us some minutes ago.
Um, um, no, I was just saying about the role play. You mean?
No, it was not about the role play.
I forgot what I was saying.
Well,
No, just to add, I don't know if last time I told you that in my school they're traveling to Spain to copy their model, and that's why they took all of the evaluations. They use rubrics because they're copying exactly the model of Spain. So
oh,
they visited like the schools that got the first places in the PISA exams, and they're trying to copy that model. It's a bit difficult at first because our culture is not used to like not competing, so the kids are very competitive, and it's everything about cooperative work. So they fight a lot at first. I mean, the first 2 months it was really difficult. This started last year. The first 2 months it was very difficult because the volume of the kids was so loud because they're always interacting, they're always standing up, um, they're always doing something out of their seat. Well, most of the time. Sometimes we do use the seats and the desk, so it was very difficult at first, but now they're getting used to like sharing, helping one another, not being mean to the person that doesn't know the answer, but helping them. So I think we're getting there, but it's a process. So each time we're learning more as teachers and students. But it's really nice because the kids, their behavior now is better than before because they're always interacting. But at first it was very difficult.
okay. They are busy working on their task.
Yes, always like solving a problem.
I love you, my baby.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lisette.
Mhm.
Well, finally, I would like to hear some of you um, if you have had some experiences with extensive reading. That was a topic that you read last week, and it is about how to promote reading outside the classroom. So,
Teacher, I would like to add something about that.
yes, Fernando.
Extensive reading, because intensive reading it has been complicated. Every time when the kids get at school, arrive at school, they have some time between 7 to no, I'm kidding, 7:40 to 8:20, where they are able to go to the library and choose the book they want to read, and they have the time to read from 8 to 8:20. That's how we experience extensive reading. And also with the platform that I mentioned before, this called My Own, that's how we also use extensive reading, where they choose the book themselves and whatever they want to read. Of course, it has to be something that adapts to their age.
Can they take those books to their homes too, or do they
Yes,
have
of
to
course,
read
they
it?
are able to take the books home. Uh-huh.
Okay,
We
thanks,
do
Fernando.
something similar. We have a traveling bag, and we use not weeks but cycles of 6 days. So they choose a book from the library to take home, and they have it for a whole cycle. They choose whichever book they want according to their age, and they have a notebook, which is the traveling notebook, and in there they write like what they like the most about the book, the main characters of the book, and they do a drawing of of that of that story, and they really like it. Actually, the days we like something happens and the library has closed and we cannot go that cycle, they're like, oh no, we want to go to the library, when are we getting the book? They really like those books because they're really nice according to their age.
Great. Do you ask the students to share the information they read or to do any exercise with
Uh,
with what they read?
They do it in a notebook, which travels all the time, and sometimes we exchange the notebook with the student. I do that, but not all teachers do it. Exchange the notebook during class, just for other kids to see it, and they like it, and they read about it. But no, it's just like a writing exercise and reading, but we don't evaluate it per se. But I do check that they do the summary every time they take a book, but it doesn't have a note.
Okay, good. So you don't grade it.
No, I don't grade it, but we make sure it's done, like the task is done, but I don't grade it now. But if they don't do it, I mean, if they don't read it, yeah, it has they have a minus point, like they didn't complete that task.
All right.
But
Okay.
in 75 kids, like only like 2 don't do it every cycle, but they actually really love it.
Okay, thank you. Juanita wrote also that she experiences extensive reading with her daughter. Her daughter takes the book that she likes to her home, and then they practice some vocabulary at home. Okay. Anybody else have comments about extensive reading, how to deal with that?
We also have, they work the Superminds book of Cambridge, and it has really interesting stories, which they love because it starts like from transition and is the same characters until 5th grade. So they know who's Ben, they know all the characters of the book, and they in the book it has stories. So Cambridge provides you with the story, like with moving characters, and so you play that first and then they read the story by themselves, and then it has like some questions of comprehension, reading comprehension. But they really like the characters of the book and the way the book is set up. It's pretty good for them.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing that. You have like share with all of us good experiences, so that we can get some ideas on how to work on reading, on creativity, on divergent thinking, other ways of grading and assessing the students. So maybe those of you who work with traditional um, methods could probably start experiencing if you can with uh, other type of activities and see if it works. That's the way changes start. When other teachers see that it works, they start doing or trying to do the same, and then proposals can be done to the administrative part of the school, um, or the heads of the school, so or language centers. So the idea is like to come up with some things new in your classes that help students not only to work on listening, reading, writing, and speaking, but also to develop other skills that are necessary, like critical thinking, like creativity, like collaborative work or cooperation. Other things that we know we use in real life outside the classroom, I mean, and that we need to help the students start developing or work on them. Any questions or comments before we finish?
Everything's clear, teacher. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for your participation.
Yes,
Thank you,
teacher.
teacher.
Thank
You've been
you.
so kind.
Any question you have, please email me.
No, teacher.
Okay, good. So hope you all have a good night and we'll meet next week. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you,
teacher.
teacher,
Bye
for
bye.
all the information.
Okay, thank you, teacher. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye
Good
bye.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Pero ahorita tengo otra.